predict what kind of tough decisions are going to come in front of a president's desk. And if you really want to know how a person will operate, look at how they've lived their life.
They were asking me about what's going on with, with what happened with the scandal and what my opinion is of if we can pull this thing off. And I said, yeah, it's gonna be just fine. And they said, how do you know? And I said, because I just met Mitt Romney.
People were afraid. People were thinking that something terrible could happen. After 9/11, the way we looked at these events changed drastically. More so than any Olympic Games, the world was really watching this one. How was the United States going to respond? Could they put on an Olympic Games?
It was worse than I'd expected. I thought the Salt Lake turnaround was just a public relations turnaround. Instead, it turned out to be a financial turnaround and a governmental turnaround.
He was not a figurehead. He was not only running this show, but he was out there speaking to the people and showing them through his words, through his actions, what the Olympics could mean to the United States.
When I was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, both of us just dissolved in tears.
Probably the toughest time of my life was standing there with Ann as we hugged each other and the diagnosis came.
I was very, very ill. I don't know if people knew how sick I was. I was frightened, Mitt was frightened, but I needed him desperately.
Look, I'm happy in life as long as I've got my soulmate with me.
Mitt decided that he was going to honor heroes throughout the country and that the torch relay was going to be all about heroes. And Mitt chose me as his hero. My life was in jeopardy. And I was like as vulnerable as a person could be. And I trust Mitt. I trust him with my life.
She's gorgeous. Absolutely beautiful. I can't explain love. I don't know why it happens. I don't know why it endures the way it does. At the very beginning, I sat with her, chatted with her, put my arm around her, and, something changed.
My 16th birthday party was when Mitt and I really became sort of an item. Mitt helped plan it, and it was just sort of the beginning of our romance. 1968, he flew into the Detroit airport right before Christmas. Of course, his mother got her arms open, and he runs right by her and grabs me.
On the car ride home from the airport, I turned to Ann and said, I feel like I've never been away. And she said, I feel the same way.
So by the time we got home, we got out of the car and we tell everybody, well, we're getting married next week. We compromised and waited until March 21st. I could do okay when I hit the 2.
My brother and I, Matt, fought a lot.
3, not bad. 4, it got to be a little much.
Hello, Ben!
Oh my gosh. Very rambunctious.
I do not want to put the water on the mud. Oh, here I am. Trying to tell you what to do.
And then with the 5th one, and Craig was my most active child. He was a handful.
Craigie! Hi! Oh, Craig, don't squirt me!
I remember my mom was always begging for us to be quiet. Just please, can I have quiet in this house?
We could bend a lot of rules and get in a lot of trouble. We could never, ever say anything bad about my mom.
I traveled a good deal in my early career. I would call Ann and I could hear the boys in the background and she might be a little exasperated. And I said, Ann, don't forget, what you're doing is more important than what I'm doing.
I hate to say it, but often I had more than 5 sons. I had 6 sons.
How you doing, Knuckles Norris?
He was really playful.
It's like,
Mitt would walk in the door after work, leave the briefcase at the door. That was it. Never thought about work again until he left in the morning.
We just felt like we were the most important thing in his life.
I went to Mom if I ever needed money, because you never went to Dad. He was way too cheap.
my dad didn't have the right bulb, so he replaced it just with whatever bulb he had. The problem is it sticks out way too far and blinds you as you cook. So he just solved that with some tin foil and duct tape.
I've been poor. I've worked from the time I was 12. I know what poverty is. I've been up through it.
For Mitt, I think he idealized his father. He really was his hero.
In the summer, my dad used to pack up our family and take us to the great national parks. It was during those trips that I fell in love with America. Dad was born in Mexico. His parents and grandparents had moved to Mexico. They were refugees from a revolution. I remember a man asking my dad, what was the most meaningful accomplishment of your life? And without hesitation, he said, the greatest accomplishment of my life is having raised you 4 kids. Like me, he fell in love young. Family for my mom and dad was everything. My dad worked for his dad. He was a drywall guy. Back then they called it lath and plaster. He could put nails in his mouth and spit them out pointy end forward. I grew up watching my dad lead.
Look, I'm in public life today because I'm concerned about America. I'm concerned about what's happening to America.
If he felt some way about a particular issue, there was no question in your mind about how he felt. Friends called him the brick because he was immovable. He let me tag along in some very unusual settings.
What's your best car on the road?
I didn't realize he was giving me an experience that was more helpful from a leadership standpoint than anything I learned in school.
Staples, I think, is a good example of where Bain and Company can support the management of an excellent company.
What was special about Mitt is he understood what was behind the numbers. What's behind the numbers was great people.
Mitt Romney valued every employee. He made it a point to let us know that every employee was critical to the success of Staples.
Why would anybody want to save on envelopes and file folders? Mitt is a cheap son of a gun. And if he could save 50 cents on paper clips, he'd drive a mile to do it.
He knows how to grow jobs, bring jobs back to this country. But if you ask me why, because I've seen him do it firsthand.
He was dealing with the fundamental problems that companies confront. He was dealing with them in a way that allowed them to grow, to add jobs, to build factories.
Wicked smart.
When I became